Testing 1, 2, 3. Good morning. I'm your host, Kenton David Bell, and welcome to Soul Food and Fuel for Your Life. So here we are in British Columbia, Vancouver. Absolutely beautiful day. It's supposed to rain later, but at the moment it's sunny, clear, and just gorgeous. And I am recording high atop the 22nd floor of the Hyatt Regency in downtown. Being someone who lives in Sedona, a small town, it's really nice to get into nice big city energies every now and then and just kind of, remind us of, the rest of humanity, I suppose. There's great energies in great cities, and there's also, things that we might call not so great energies. One of the things I've noticed on my trip up here in Canada, which has been quite a journey for about, I think I'm on my 6th day now, and I leave in a few more days, a total of like 9 days total. And I've been to Vancouver Island, which is one of my favorite places I've been to before. And as a matter of fact, my brother Corey and we went and spent a Christmas there together in the mid-90s or early 90s. And so Canada is just absolutely beautiful, and the people are wonderful. I've always fantasized, I would say, off and on for the last 30 years, that this is a place I could easily move up here. So I just wanted to kind of share that I'm in the energy of Canada. It's a beautiful day. I am in a hotel room, and it sounds like they're doing some work in the room next door, so if you hear some background noise, it's possible it's that. What I want to talk about today is some stuff that's been coming through very loud and clear recently. So we're talking about deliberate creation here, okay? And, we know law of attraction. This is for people that really kind of understand that already. And even if you don't, that's fine. But law of attraction is just a very small sliver of everything we're talking about. As far as deliberate creation, we're also talking about the realization, the actualization of who you really are, your essence, your soul, and then how to move through the world knowing that who you are, knowing how to master aspects of self, and in this case, mastering the different physics and laws that govern each of the different dimensional energies that we coexist in simultaneously, and creating from that place. So it's not just creating from a place of, I would like to have a new car, new house, more money, all of that. As a matter of fact, when people are doing that, often they'll find, let's say they're on a roll for a while. I've been there, making hundreds of thousands of dollars or more a year, and working all the time and being able to go anywhere, buy anything kind of that I want, really, without thinking about it much. But then also realizing that I wasn't really deeply happy. Something was missing from the picture. And for me, that something is call it our essence, call it our soul, call it whatever you want to call it. But each and every one of us has that something in us that is here to have certain experiences, call it destiny. I believe free will and destiny both exist. I believe that actually, if we're not thinking in paradoxes, we're probably stuck, especially with everything happening in the world today. So here are a few aspects of, let's talk about the third dimensional energy first, okay? So when we're in a third dimensional energy, which is what most people call the real world most of the time, when we're in this sort of energy, when we reach for power, we're actually reaching for force. So if we're pushing back on something coming at us that we don't like, and we're pushing back, for instance, then this is where it's getting controversial. I'm sure there's going to be many people who disagree with me here. But remember, it's not about the topic. It's about the mindset and learning how to speak and think from these new places that will actually free you and allow you to move through worlds much more freely, as opposed to being stuck in the worlds that most of us are stuck in multiple aspects of ourselves stuck in different segments of what we could call worlds or experiences simultaneously. So when we're in the third dimension and we reach for power, we're not reaching for power, we're reaching for force. When we're in the third dimension, we do not see ourselves as the architect, the creator of our hologram, of our experience that we're having in that moment. So we're seeing ourselves, in a sense, much lesser than who we truly are. Now, that's not even a judgment. It's okay. This is all part of the learning experience that each and every one of us is here to learn through. And we're all where we are at any given moment. And you can be in the fifth dimension and still have crap stuck in the third dimension at times, stuff that you haven't cleared, that you haven't healed. And so that's kind of the theme of today's show. Today's broadcast is going to be kind of speaking to this theme. So for instance, we're going to talk about the vaccine because this is such a hot topic right now. And I've been amazed at how many people I know who I consider to be very intelligent, very progressive, forward-thinking, and how against the vaccine they are. And so back in March 2020, I personally had COVID very bad. This was when it was first out. And I remember the day I got it, I was actually swimming at the Princess Hotel or I didn't get it that day, the first day I started noticing the symptoms. And I was a spa member there, the Princess in Scottsdale, beautiful place. I love going there, and I'd go there almost every day to do my swimming and steaming and stuff like that. But I was in one of the main pools, the adult pool, I remember, and I could feel this dark cloud coming over me. And my partner, Christy, at the time, I said to her, you know what? I could feel I'm getting sick. And I also could feel that I wasn't able to stop it. Meaning, many times when I'm starting to get a cold in the last decade or so, or a flu, or I feel a little symptom like that, I can usually reverse it fairly quickly through just doing some energy work, getting my mind clear that I'm not going to get sick, and kind of a combination of a bunch of things. I'm not going to go into all of that right now. But usually I can curtail it or just have very mild symptoms for a day or two, and then they're gone. This felt very different. This was a cloud. It felt like a dark cloud. And in that moment, I could feel I didn't have the energy or the oomph, the vitality to fight it off for whatever reason. Now, when I look back on it, I understand why I had to have this experience. Nobody was getting tested yet for it. And, I went to my doctor, and only if you had been recently in China were you able to even get a test for it. And so I had it severely for about 6 weeks. I felt like an anvil on my chest. A couple times I thought, wow, I might die from this. And I considered going to the hospital, and I'm not against hospitals. I'm not against Western medicine, but I do have a thing about, the hospital itself could be more dangerous than the virus itself. And often, that's not an uncommon thought, I know, amongst many people. So anyhow, I wrote it out, and then the vaccine came. But before the vaccine came, I was very cautious, and having had it so bad, we were quarantined like most of us, the world. And then the vaccine came out, and I thought a lot about it. I meditated on it. I wasn't fearful of it, partially because of the experience I had. I thought, well, it almost killed me once. Do I want to go through that again? I also considered the idea that I had the antibodies, and I've worked with my, call it higher self, my guides. And I know that there's many things that other people would get that would kill them that just, I believe, will not kill me. And so it wasn't about a fear thing either. For me, it was something else. And my inner voice said, not only is it a good idea for you to get the vaccine, Kenton, but it's actually good for you. This is where it's going to get controversial for a lot of my spiritual friends and listeners out there who have very strong opinions. One of the things I've worked on since my awakening has been the genetics and the DNA within us. And it's hard to explain, except for those of you, I'm sure there's many of you out there who have had similar experiences, who are clairvoyant and master healers in their own right. So I would go into, after the vaccine, after some time, I went in and looked at my genetics and DNA, and I did a little work in there. I'm just going to leave it at that right now. But for me, what it is about is it's about the evolution of the species. There's something here that we are evolving through. And for me, with the vaccine in particular, it's actually helping my genetics and my DNA come into a new balance that is going to let me be healthier and stronger, more vital overall. And I'm already noticing that. And some of you out there might think, well, how can that be? Well, first of all, it all really boils down to my belief. If I believe something's good for me, it's going to be good for me. If I really, truly believe it from a high level of consciousness. And when I say high level, I mean from the fifth dimensional to a seventh dimensional range of consciousness is what's going to allow me to dictate what happens to me, no matter what it is. And I'm not necessarily equating myself to these incredibly high power gurus, but, well, yes, I am in a ways, because I'm comparing all of us to these high-powered gurus that we've heard stories about for years that will drink poison and they're fine. I'm going to paraphrase this. I remember something like Ram Dass's guru. God, his name just escapes me at the moment, in the Himalayas, that he went to when he kind of broke ways with Timothy Leary at that point, and their LSD experiments and journeys that they were both asked to leave Harvard for. An amazing shift in consciousness for humanity right at that time. But he was telling his guru about, this LSD stuff, and the guru said, "Oh, let me try some." And so I think Ram Dass gave him a fairly large dose, multiple doses. And the guru sat there and ate it, and Ram Dass was waiting for the guru, I think, to have this mystical experience. And he was very, excited probably to, what is my guru's already in line with LSD on top of that? Boy, what's going to come through? It's going to be rainbows and unicorns, right? Well, apparently the guru had no reaction to it at all. His consciousness far exceeded what the LSD would do to a normal person. As a matter of fact, I've worked with the tools of psychedelics, holotropics, and what I find is that, for instance, ayahuasca, the more ayahuasca you do, the less you actually need to take you to that place. Psilocybin, very similar, the magic mushroom. As a matter of fact, we just need little traces of these things after we're used to their, let's call it openings, their keys that unlock certain things in us. And if we overuse it, we're actually damaging ourselves. For instance, it's my belief too, if you use psychedelics in just a recreational way, that is very dangerous. If you use psychedelics and, such as magic mushrooms, ayahuasca to name a few, LSD, and you meditate quite a bit, that's part of your practice, then they can be powerful tools if they're used sparingly and in a sacred way. But otherwise, what we're doing is we're opening up things in us that are very dangerous if not understood fully. So I caution all of you as I'm talking about this, I do not want to glorify that story with Ram Dass and the LSD and his guru. As a matter of fact, there's a great movie, if you haven't seen it, it's called Dying to Know, and it's about the relationship between Timothy Leary and Ram Dass. And as Timothy Leary is nearing the end of his life, and that's cancer. And it was interesting because they started on a similar path, both Harvard professors. They found this, or should say discovered this substance called LSD. They discovered what it did, these openings. And then together for a while, they were, they did this together. They were known to be doing this together, so on and so forth. And then they parted ways pretty much, and Ram Dass went off and started having a spiritual experiences, studying with the guru, meditating, and his whole life became something very different. Timothy Leary, on the other hand, I would say, and I don't know for sure, but I would call him an atheist, most likely. And he didn't pursue the similar path. As a matter of fact, he was on the lam, so to speak, for a long time. And then near the end of his life, if you watch this movie, watch the contrast between the two. It is as stark as it can be. One decided to follow a path of his inner guru, his God within, and to discover the true nature of that of which we all are. And the other one just continued to kind of promote this kind of almost, I guess, hedonistic way of life. And by the way, I'm a bit of a hedonist myself, so there's no judgment there. But there was nothing much more there either. And as you see on the movie, I mean, this was just my opinion, my observation, that it was, pathetic to watch Timothy Leary as a chain-smoking alcoholic dying here, and he reunited with Ram Dass to help him for the two of them to bring their journey to close as well. And then we have Ram Dass, who had the stroke and, was in a wheelchair, and his grace still flowed through him after all of that. And I just have goosebumps up and down. And right there is, in a nutshell, I think, is what we're talking about here in so many ways throughout life. We're all having this conversation one way or another. How to live life, what's going to make you happy. I'm fortunate enough to consider one of my mentors and probably truly the only man I've met on the planet so far that I would like to emulate. I would say I feel differently about that now just because I've got more into my own. I don't want to emulate anybody. Is one of somebody who had Ram Dass as a mentor, and his name is Alan Cohen. And Alan is one of the most amazing teachers on the planet, in my view. One of the most of great integrity, of true power, and power is always held very quietly. Alan always seems to me like he's just, when you listen to him or watch him on YouTube, that he looks like he's just woke up for a nap, or he's stoned, which he absolutely is not stoned, I guarantee you. But he is relaxed, he's contained, he is a truly unconditional love, and I'm proud to know that I've been influenced by him every day, even though I have not seen him in person or spoken to him in person recently in some years. So we got off onto a little bit of a tangent there. I digress, but I want to come back to the vaccine now. And we're talking about power versus force, really. In the third dimension, it's force. If you are a fifth dimensional being, meaning mastering the fifth dimension or higher, the ascended masters pretty much dwell, the ones that we know of, up to this point, in the seventh dimension, and that is, the true Christ and those other deities that are at that level. A true master cannot step down below the fifth dimension, really. You start to lose your ability to remember who you are. But that is changing now, too. There is a mutation happening in humanity where the third solar plexus is beginning to hold more divine energy. And this is also the end of codependence on the planet. And that's another story for another time. So here's what I want to point out, and for us to look at and to contemplate is, if you are so certain that the vaccine is bad for you, if you are so adamant that something is some conspiracy out there, a company, a person, a government is pushing something on you, you're not in your power, period, if that's how you're looking at it. That's the truth. And remember, in this work, in this podcast, soul food and fuel for your life is exactly what we're talking about here, okay? So if you're feeling that there's something outside of you that has power over you, or is trying to control you, You are not in a higher vibrational space where you know you are creating your reality. Because if you know you're creating your reality, that means you know you're creating it all. And one of the other foundational principles that we work with here, which is originally from A Course in Miracles, is that nothing real can ever be threatened. So if you're feeling threatened by the vaccine, or you're feeling threatened by somebody wanting to take away your liberties, or you're feeling threatened by big pharma, or whatever it is, you're the one creating that, and you're putting yourself in the position of a victim in that. Once again, we go back to the Ram Dass story, and his guru ate the LSD, and he said, well, nothing's happening. Because it's similar to the gurus who drink poison, and they're fine. Nothing happens. Because they know that they are the victim of nothing. Nothing has power over them. Okay, so you might say, well, then why even, let's say I am that evolved, and that I agree with what you're saying, Kenton, and I have no fear, therefore I don't need the vaccine. All right. Now, on another level, this is the complexity of it all. This is what Mother Earth Gaia has told me, and it's going to sound very controversial, and it doesn't matter where it comes from, whether meaning bat or lab or man-made or whatever. It came from Gaia to help us. The pandemic is to help unify the species in order for us to come together, because we're moving from the third, which is an individuated state, into a fourth dimension as a collective. In the fourth dimension, we give up the needs of the individual for the needs of the many. Now, a truly enlightened person will know this and be able to say, well, I can take the vaccine and it's not going to affect me. And what happens is we begin to unify our consciousness. In order to move through the fourth dimension, we must move as a unified presence. Take, for instance, and once again, I'm not really politically polarized. I personally have always been entertained by Donald Trump long before he ran for president. And I used to talk about him in webinars when he was on The Apprentice. No matter what you think about the guy, he's really good at speaking things into reality. And that's how he actually became president, is by doing that. Now, when the slogan to make America great again is promoted through that is through a fear-based platform, as most of us know. Okay? And in that fear-based platform, the reason that is fear-based is because when you start moving from the third dimension into the fourth dimension, what happens is your shadow stuff has to come up and be dealt with. So in the third dimension, we see life outside of us. We don't see ourselves as creator of our existence. We actually see ourselves, that life comes at us and we react to us. That's the force thing. If we believe in God, we don't really see ourselves as part of God in the third dimension. It's impossible to have the experience that I am God in the third dimension. If you believe you're having that experience, I guarantee you it's an egoic mind, Jedi mind ego trip you're doing on yourself. Okay? And so in that place, as we begin to move through the fourth dimension, you have to face into your fears. The fourth dimension, you can only move through, you only navigate with unconditional love for all others. Listen to that. Unconditional love for all others and complete acceptance of what is. So when you start looking at the GOP platform, really thinking about what's going on with these are absolute principles, by the way. This is not political. This is not my subjective truth. These are absolute truths. And don't even take my word for it, but practice them. Get out of the thoughts and start paying attention to the mindset you're in. You'll hear me talk about universal mindset. The universal mindset isn't just one of these mindsets, meaning third, fourth, fifth dimensional. There's so many other labels. There's other systems that correlate to what I'm speaking of that are more psychological even, like spiral dynamics. A good friend of mine, Christopher Cook, Solonics, his work, very similar, but in my opinion, no offense to any of these, they're all lovely stuff. They're missing some of the mysticism that was taken out of the system a long time ago. So they have a tendency to not be whole in nature this is my own personal view. Still incredible bodies of work. And for each his own, some people are drawn to this work, some people are drawn to that work. There's no right or wrong here. And Christopher Cook, who I just mentioned, is one of my dear friends. I have nothing but the greatest respect and love for him. And I know it's mutual with him. So when we get back to the third dimension, we're talking about the MAGA movement, for instance. It's fear. These people don't know how to move forward. They would actually rather die than move forward. That's what's going on. Look at them. They're mostly the anti-maskers, the anti-vaxxers. They talk about freedom. Yeah, freedom for whatever. I agree. I agree about the freedom stuff. Freedom to die as well. I'm not afraid of death. And most of them are not either. And that's okay. And it is a choice on some level. So it's not about the individual choice. It is and it isn't. But when we go from a third dimensional space, which is an individuated experience, we must move then, if we're going to evolve, into the fourth dimensional space, which is a collective. We give up the needs of the individual for the needs of the many. Now, I'm not talking just about the vaccine. These are absolute physics of these different dimensional energies. So we have to learn how to come together and work together as an organism of one, the whole species being one organism attempting to ascend into higher vibration right now. And we are. It just looks chaotic on the ground here. The ground noise is very loud, very deafening, because everything that we've come to count on is no longer count-onable. And believe me, this is just the beginning, folks. It's going to get much, much more intense. And many people will choose to leave because it will be too much. So it's interesting. You literally watch the MAGA movement and their claim for freedom, liberty, and life, in many ways, are killing themselves off, which is necessary, not because I'm not political, but because the organism of humanity is evolving right now. That's right. That's what's going on. And it's, you could say, it's individual choice. Go ahead. Say that. Stay in that stance. You'll find yourself stuck. You'll find yourself getting more angry, more irritated, more pissed off. It's up to you. Now, as you begin to move through the fourth dimension, you must practice. And I say must. It's not, this is a must. These are new principles that we're learning as a species again. So the fourth is collective. We give up the needs of the individual at this moment to move into the collective, the needs of the many. Now, that doesn't mean, you become selfless and give up everything of your own needs, but it becomes a priority in a sense. And I'm talking as a species, the consciousness of the species more than the consciousness of the individual. It's interesting. Up here in Canada, they're not nearly as divided. It's interesting. It's very interesting how it works. One of the things that really jumps out at me here in Canada, this is an example of what I'm talking about. In certain ways, they're more suited for the in certain aspects. I see this graduation into the fourth dimensional energies are doing a little bit better collectively than we are at the moment in the U.S., even though we're so similar. One of the things I notice is in both countries, for instance, in traffic transportation, the pedestrian has the right of way. And I've been in countries where that's not true. And so I know the difference. But here in Canada, the pedestrian has a greater right of way, meaning the collective in general will give the pedestrian or the bicyclist much more room. They'll stop, they'll wait a lot longer instead of trying to drive across a crosswalk. They'll see somebody getting close to the crosswalk and they'll stop and wait for them to cross. It's a certain consideration. It's a certain sister brotherhood of love that makes it flow in a way that's so much better. It's kind of also the same as certain countries that have roundabouts versus stop signs, and how the flow works better. There's a flow to it. I live in Sedona, Arizona, where we have roundabouts now, and it's kind of funny because most Americans don't know how to drive around a roundabout, so it adds confusion. But if you start paying attention to these little details, you start to notice what I'm speaking about the collective versus the individual. Now, we all live in all of these dimensional spaces simultaneously. And we'll get down to that. We'll get to that later. So we're not like giving up something. What we're doing is transcending and including and moving into a higher level of mastery where our lens is at any given time. And as we begin to learn this, we learn multiple lenses, you see. As you learn multiple lenses, you're able to literally begin to walk through worlds, walk through walls. And I mean that literally move mountains is what we're talking about here. Okay? I know many of you are going to think I sound crazy. I must be delusional. Those of you who do know me well have these experiences personally themselves with me as well as on their own. So they know that it's true. This is the direction we're moving, people. It is so incredible that we can't even see it. We are so beyond who we think we are. We think of ourselves as so small. Now, in order to get into a solid footing on the fifth dimensional plane of existence, which is where we are headed and where you want to be, because when we start getting into that state, and that's where the planet's headed, by the way, into the next 13,000 years or so, that's our next cycle. We will, in order to get there, you have to pass through the fourth dimension. Once again, the physics for it is unconditional love for all others and complete acceptance of what is. Now, you're going to hear me talk about I'm going to just say this stuff over and over and over and over again. And so, for instance, you know that phrase, between a rock and a hard place. We all been there, right? Where it's like, oh my God, nothing's moving. I'm stuck. And what do I do? Blah, blah, blah. The moment that we start to come into acceptance with things like that, the moment we start to love all those around us, as opposed to being in the critical, egoic mind that sees problems and small solutions, not even solutions, but small contracted worlds. The moment that we're able to open up into unconditional love for all others and practice complete acceptance, it's amazing how everything begins to shift. That rock in a hard place begins to dissolve right before our eyes. And all it takes is love. Now, for myself, what I'm wanting to do here is translate these new energies that are coming through the planet. That's kind of what I see as one of my jobs, as well as helping clear your field. Those who work with me know about that. And I'm just going to take a short plug myself here, that one of the things I do is help clear the traumas from this lifetime plus past lifetimes that are stuck in the fourth dimensional, the astral body. The astral body is the fourth dimension. That connects to the heart. I was just having a great conversation with this incredible woman that just recently a friend introduced me to. Very smart, very aware, very much on the path of awakening. I've laughed a lot with her today about similarities in stubbornness and all. We were talking a lot about this. And how we get stuck ourselves in the fourth dimension and our judgments get in the way. And it was an incredible conversation. And what I find for myself is it's the little judgments that begin to snowball and then create these rock and hard places for us that prevent us from moving forward. So would you rather be right or happy? Or in this case, would you rather be right or evolve? And I know many of you know that Toyota Prius story I have where, one day, this is, 8 years ago or something, I was living in the town of Sonoma, California. And Prius pulls out in front of me. I'm a little irritated that day and goes super slow. And I got really pissed off. And I'm thinking to myself, that effing Prius and that effing Prius driver. I wish they just and I kept trying to get around them. They kept going slow, and I'd want to turn. They get in my way. And these are little windy roads. Well, long story short, this happened almost, 5-6 times a week for the next year and a half. And I knew pretty quickly that I was creating this. And I knew that I was creating through my anger. And I didn't want to let go of the anger. I wanted to hang on to that anger. Even after I knew that this was the thing in my way, I was addicted to that anger. Well, I was brought up that way. My father had a lot of anger. My mother was scared of anger. They're both there. Those are both same side of the same coin. A different side of the same coin, by the way. So anger is healthy at times. As a matter of fact, you need anger to move. We'll talk about that later. One of the signature exiting energies from the fourth into the fifth is sometimes some anger is needed almost as booster fuel to get you out of the orbit of the collective. The collective doesn't want you to change. The collective says it's dangerous for you to leave. It's like tribal in a sense. So as long as you are, and this isn't my opinion. Well, it is my opinion because it is mine, but I'm trying to get beyond the idea of the opinion. I'm not trying to talk you into getting vaxxed. What I'm trying to talk us all into is, hey, let's get together. Come on, brothers and sisters. Let's get together and move through this thing collectively. Let's stop being divided about it. You want to take down, you want things to change. Things are changing. I'm telling you. It's changing. The frequencies of the planet are changing. The things where you think people, the big pharma, big government is in control, it's all changing. It's all breaking down. Trust me, it's breaking down. And I know there's a lot of controversy in the big pharma around this and the money and all of this. But at the same time, big pharma has often helped us. Remember, this is something I remember all the time I come back to. And you have to make the choice yourself. And I've thought this for a long time. And one of my other favorite teachers out there I've enjoyed for years is Greg Braden. And I was listening to this is a long time ago. I was listening to this and I was saying, yep, this is it. That either you believe that there is one benevolent source, the universe, source, God, whatever you want to call it, working for you all the time. Always has your best benefit in mind, always. Or that there are two separate forces, one good and one evil, God, devil, Lucifer, whatever you want to call it. I personally believe in only one benevolent being, and the supreme being, God, call it God, source, call it ourself, I think is what we're going to eventually discover here. Not tomorrow or next year maybe, but soon. But we could discover it tomorrow. It's always there for us. But you have to decide, is the universe on your side? Is it working on your behalf or not? Are you the victim of something? Are you the victim of bigger energies out there that have rule over you? Or are you going to take your power back? If you really own who you are, the vaccine isn't going to do anything bad to you at all. Guarantee it. Just like the gurus who drink the poison. There is no thing outside of you that is evil. The evil doesn't exist. There's no such thing as evil. It's only fear. And that's part of the learning of the mastery of the self, you see. Knowing that there is only love and love conquers all. There is no being, no thing in the world, in the universe, that can take you down unless you decide to believe in the illusion that it can. I'll bet these illusions are very, very powerful, no doubt. But you, my dear friends, are much, much more powerful. You have the ability to override any negative side effects. There is no negative side effects. These conspiracy theories, I'm going to call them. I'm gathering evidence. I've heard this happen, this happened. You can make up anything and gather evidence for anything that you make up, because that's how powerful of a being you are. So if you're allowing yourself to, let's say, live a smaller life even. Oh, I'm going to check off the grid. No, I'm not saying that's wrong. You could do that. It's all personal choice. And maybe that's, whatever you choose is appropriate for you, because you only get what you deserve. You get what you think. You get what you believe. That's it. But the more and more I delve into this and experiment with it, not just with myself, but with my clients, man, oh man, you should see what's happening. People are like blowing up. I mean, like blowing up. Their dreams are coming true. They're who they are to be here. They're becoming actualized, realized. They're having success in the real world like you would not believe. I have clients right now that are signing multi-million-dollar contracts with all kinds of things, whether it's movies, books, all kinds of businesses, entrepreneurs that come up with new ideas. It's amazing what I'm seeing happening. And it's because that's what we're here to be doing. We're here to be successful. We're here to learn about our true God nature, that we are so creative. We're here to learn about power. I think about Carolyn Mace. She talks about that. She had quite a bit of influence on me as well. Talk about a powerful woman. She was a nun at one time, and now she teaches, all kinds of stuff, archetypes, all kinds of stuff, but really it comes down to power. This planet that we're on here is a school teaching us about our own power. So not power over anybody else, but our own power and our ability to create the life that we're here to really create. I'm going to paraphrase something by one of my favorite musicians of all time. And that's David Bowie. And I remember where I was in Quito Airport, coming back from the Amazon in Ecuador. And I had been working with shaman and ayahuasca down at the time. I've been down there many times now. But I remember hearing he passed. And one of the things I think he said shortly before he passed was, the only great thing about getting old is you become who you're supposed to be. And that has really stuck with me. I listen to his music all the time. I probably will today after I spoke about him. And David Bowie was, when I saw him depart, it was as though he didn't skip a beat. He just was rocking right into the next world. What a very strange experience. And, you could call it the subconscious mind. You could call it spirit. You could call it the universe. You could call it David Bowie's spirit itself. But it was 1 year to the day after his death. I was in Florida that night, living there in Florida, and with my partner at the time. And we were laying down to go to sleep, and I started floating in space. And it's like, I'm seeing all these stars, and it's like, what? And it was like really strong, almost, like, what's going on? And I wasn't, didn't have any substances in me or anything like that. And it kept going on, and I'm floating. I'm seeing myself as in a spacesuit floating in space. And it kept going, I couldn't get to sleep. And it went on for like an hour. Finally, I figured out, what is this? And I started hearing in my head, changes, and Space Odyssey. And I looked at the date, and I realized it was exactly 1 year ago that David Bowie had passed. And I don't know, call that whatever you want to call it, but it was an experience. And anyhow, just felt like sharing that a little private, personal story about myself. We're going to start wrapping this up. I'm not going to edit this podcast today. I am just going to post it in its entirety. I might go and clean up just a tiny bit. But it's been a very clear stream of thought for me. We've talked about really kind of moving mostly from the third into the fourth, and looking at the reasons why we are or are not taking the vaccine. Personally, I have no personal judgment over it, except for the fact that as a collective, it's time for us to stop being divided. As individuals and a collective, it's time for us to stop living in fear. There is literally nothing to fear except fear itself. So I'm going to dedicate this podcast, which I have not dedicated a podcast yet, to a couple of my favorite people that have had influences on me. And one is Ram Dass, who is also the mentor of my mentor, Alan Cohen. And Alan is one of the most amazing men I've ever known and probably will ever know. And also to a bright woman that I was having an incredible conversation with this morning, Noelle. Thank you, Noelle, for your inspiration. And to all of my clients that I am constantly learning through, and to all the people I run into, because every single person that I have interaction with, I learn so much from. And also, last but not least, is also to Cherie, very good dear friend of mine as well. One of the reasons I'm up here in Canada is visiting Cherie. So a big shout out to her and her incredible insights and growth and evolution. And to all of you. I love you all, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm Kenton David Bell. Thank you for listening to my, I believe, 7th episode, 6th or 7th, of Soul Food and Fuel for Your Life. I look forward to more.